From perfect family to heartbreak, my daughter's unthinkable requests. He swept me off my feet with his charm and blinding ambition. It wasn't a fairy tale castle, but our little apartment was a safe haven. It was us, and I love every chipped teacup, every slightly too small corner. Our daughter, Sarah, arrived soon after, a perfect little doll with bright eyes. I actually believe we had it all a loving, unbreakable family. I landed a job as a secretary at a small company, a humble but reliable position. John, on the other hand, was rapidly climbing a ladder at his construction firm. He'd come home later and later, spinning tales of colossal projects and even grander deals. I swelled with pride, picturing our secure future. Then, a creeping shadow began to poison our domestic bliss. He started coming home late, as narrowed with suspicion, a darkness I'd never seen before. At first, I tried to laugh it off. You think I'm cheating? John, with who? The mailman. He didn't crack a smile, only a cold, unwavering stare. Don't play dumb, Kelly. I see how men look at you. For God's sake. John, I cry, my voice cracking. I'm your wife, I love you. But my words were like whispers in a hurricane, lost before they even reached him. He simply couldn't or wouldn't believe me. John's distrust was a slow-acting poison, seeping into every corner of our lives, tainting everything we'd built. Through it all, Sarah remained blissfully nowhere, a bright spot in a gathering storm. The irony wasn't lost on me. John was the one constantly working late, always on business trips. If anyone had reason to be suspicious, it was me. But I trusted him. I believed in our vows, in our love. Why couldn't he do the same? One night, after a particularly brutal argument, I found myself staring at the ceiling, utterly unable to sleep. John's soft snores filled the room, but I felt a million miles away from him. How did we get here? I thought of leaving, of taking Sarah and making a clean break. But where would we go? What kind of life could I give her on a secretary's meager salary? And despite everything, a stubborn ember of love still flickered for the man he used to be, for the man I so desperately hoped he could be again. Just when I thought things couldn't possibly get more complicated, life threw me another curveball. Mom had a stroke. It struck without warning, leaving us all reeling in disbelief. Mom had always been the picture of health, fiercely independent, determined to live life to the fullest. She lived in a gorgeous house, in the fancy part of town, courtesy of Dad's life insurance and her shrewd investments. I used to joke that she was living the life of a retired movie star, but that Tuesday morning, everything shattered. I got the call at work, a horrifying buzz that sent ice through my veins. I rushed to the hospital, my heart hammering in my throat, each beat a painful echo of dread. The next few weeks were a nightmare blur of sterile hospital rooms and terrifying medical jargon. I went to every specialist, every top-notch clinic in the area, desperate for someone to tell me Mom would be okay. But the prognosis was grim, a crushing weight on my soul. How could I possibly juggle caring on Mom and managing my job? It felt like drowning in slow motion, each day heavier than the last. Then, out of the blue, John presented an idea that sounded almost too good to be true. I nearly choked on my pasta when he suggested it. Think about it, Kelly, he said, his voice unusually calm. It's a great house in a fantastic neighborhood. Sarah would have her own room, maybe even a playroom. Plus, we could rent out our apartment for some extra cash. I had to admit, on paper, it made sense. Mom's house was undeniably nicer than our cramped apartment, but still, something felt deeply unsettling. I don't know, John, I hesitated, picking at my food. It's Mom's house. We can't just barge in. Ask her, he insisted, his eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity. It's better than a nursing home. He had a point there. Mom had made it crystal clear she never wanted to end up in a glorified prison for old people. Maybe this could actually work. The next day, to my utter surprise, Mom's face lit up at the idea. Kelly, darling, she said, her voice still weak but filled with genuine warmth. This old house needs some life in it again. And just like that, it was decided. We were moving into Mom's house. As I started packing up our apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something huge, something that would irrevocably change our lives. I just didn't know if it was something wonderful or something utterly devastating. John was ecstatic about the move, practically buzzing with excitement. Even Sarah seemed thrilled about having a bigger room and a real backyard. But the move to Mom's house brought a whole new set of challenges, a crushing weight of responsibility. I quickly realized that taking care of a stroke patient was a full-time job, one I was woefully ill-equipped to handle. After a week of sleepless nights and stress-filled days, I hired a nurse to help out during the day. Nurse Jenny was a godsend, a kind and capable woman who came in every morning at 8 o'clock and stayed until 6 o'clock, taking care of Mom's basic needs. Evenings and nights were all on me. I'd come home from work, exhausted but determined, and plunge into the endless cycle of feeding, cleaning, and comforting. The stroke had affected her speech, leaving her frustrated and often unable to communicate. I changed her diaper, giving her as much dignity as I could muster. Then came the sponge baths, endless repositioning to prevent bed sores. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally, but I did it because I loved her, because she would have done the same for me. A silent promise whispered in every tender touch. What I didn't expect was Sarah's reaction to her grandmother's condition. At 11 years old, I thought she'd be old enough to understand. But was I wrong? One evening, as I was heading to Mom's room, I saw Sarah dart past, her face pinched with disgust. "Sarah," I called out, my voice sharp with concern. "Where are you going? Don't you want to say hi to Grandma?" She shook her head violently. "No way. It smells gross in there." I was floored, stunned by her cruelty. "Sarah, that's not a nice thing to say. Grandma needs our help and support right now." "I don't care. She's all broken. She's disgusting. I'm not going near her." Before I could respond, she whirled around, slamming the door behind her, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. Where had my sweet little girl gone? I didn't sign up for this. John hadn't signed up for this. None of us had signed up for this mess of diapers and medication schedules. For the heartbreaking reality of watching someone you love slowly fade away. The one silver lining, the only glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness, was seeing how close John and Sarah had become. They always had a good relationship, but now it seemed stronger than ever. Our bond forged in the shared experience of caring for Mom. I'd hear them laughing together in the living room, or see them huddled over Sarah's homework at the kitchen table. It warmed my heart, even as it made me feel increasingly isolated, like an outsider looking in on a family I no longer truly belonged to. Mom's condition stabilized, but she still needed constant care. I was perpetually exhausted, but I had somehow found a rhythm, a way to keep all the plates spinning. Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, everything came crashing down. The phone rang while I was changing Mom's sheets, a jarring intrusion on the mundane routine. It was Mrs. Peterson, our old neighbor from the apartment complex. "Kelly, dear," she said, her voice dripping with Fox concern. "I thought you should know I've been seeing John around quite a bit, in the company of young women. Different ones, always very pretty." I thanked her, my voice strangled whisper, and hum out, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a physical blow. That night, I confronted John, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. "Oh, those are just potential tenants," he said smoothly, avoiding my gaze. "I'm showing them the apartment." I wanted to believe him. I really did. A week later, I found a lipstick stain on his collar, a perfect crimson kiss mocking my blind faith. My hand shook as I held it up to the light, trying to convince myself it was just a pen mark or a food stain. But deep down, I knew better. I waited until his next business trip to make my move. The sounds coming from the bedroom confirmed my worst fears before I even opened the door. There was John, in our bed, with a woman I had never seen before. They scrambled to cover themselves, their faces contorted with shame and shock. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice laced with anger and panic. I couldn't speak, paralyzed by a wave of nausea and disbelief. I just stood there, staring at the scene before me, the shattered remnants of our marriage scattered at my feet. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," he said, his voice strangely detached. "But let's be honest, Kelly, I'm bored. You're always busy with your mother. This is exciting." His words cut deeper than any knife, twisting in my gut, stealing the air from my lungs. Without a word, I turned and left, my mind already racing, desperately trying to figure out what I needed to do next. The divorce proceedings were ugly, a brutal battle over every penny. John fought me every step of the way, reducing our shared history to a cold, clinical assessment of our assets on a balance sheet. Then came the hardest part, the agonizing realization that I was about to lose so much more than just my marriage. Custody of Sarah. At 12 years old, she declared, her voice surprisingly firm, "I want to live with that. I don't want to be around Grandma anymore. It's gross and depressing, and Mom's always trying to make me help." The judge nodded sympathetically, his expression carefully neutral. He took into account John's higher income, the stability he could provide. In the end, John was awarded primary custody. I was devastated, but I tried to focus on what was best for Sarah, clinging to the hope that she will understand, someday, that I was doing everything I could for her. John could give her opportunities I couldn't: private school, dance lessons, summer camps. We agreed on weekends and holidays on me, a schedule that looked so neat and tidy on paper, but felt like a gaping wound in my heart. I felt like I was losing everything: my husband, my home, and now my daughter. The first few months after the divorce are a desolate landscape of loneliness and despair, but I clung to my weekends with Sarah like a lifeline. We'd go to the movies, have ice cream in the park, or just hang out at home, talking and laughing, trying to rebuild the connection that had been so cruelly severed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Slowly, imperceptibly, things began to change. Sarah started cancelling plans. "I have a sleepover," she'd say, her voice flat, or "Dad's taking me to a concert." I tried to be understanding, to give her the space she needed, but each cancellation felt like a knife twisting in my gut, a painful reminder of the growing distance between us. Soon, The cancellations became more frequent, a steady erosion of our time together. My calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages were met with one-word responses, if I got any response at all. One Sunday, after yet another cancelled visit, I decided to call Sarah directly, a desperate attempt to break through the wall that had been erected between us. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. This time, a robotic voice informed me that the number I was trying to reach had blocked my calls. John's number. What do you want, Kelly? His voice was cold, annoying, a stark contrast to the warmth he used to exude. John, she's blocked my number. What's going on? There was a long pause, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Then, look, Kelly, Sarah doesn't want to talk to you right now. You need to respect that. Respect that. She's my daughter. My voice cracked with a mixture of anger and despair. I'm right now. She doesn't want to be around all that negativity at your place. I mean, the sickness, the sadness. Sarah needs stability. She needs a normal family life here. Why can't you just let her be happy? I couldn't speak, choked by a wave of grief and betrayal. Tears were streaming down my face, hot and stinging, and I was almost glad John couldn't see me, couldn't witness the devastation he had wrought. Look, he continued, his voice softening slightly, a deceptive veneer of concern. I know this is hard, but if Sarah doesn't want to see you right now, you need to respect that. Don't force it. It'll only push her away more. I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand my rights as a mother, but a small, rational part of my brain whispered that he might be right. If I pushed too hard, I might lose Sarah forever. I sank to the floor, the phone clutched to my chest, the weight of my despair crushing me. My little girl, my Sarah, didn't want me anymore. Someone else was tucking her in at night, kissing her goodnight, helping her with her homework, sharing all the precious moments I was missing. Mom found me the hours later, still huddled on the floor, the phone a cold, dead weight in my hand. She managed to shuffle over with her walker, her face lined with concern. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. What's wrong, sweetheart? She asked, her voice raspy but filled with love. I looked up at her, this woman who had been my rock for so long. In that moment, our roles reversed again. I was the child, lost and broken, desperately seeking comfort. Oh, Mom, I sobbed, reaching for her hand. I've lost her. I've lost my baby girl. Mom squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. Kelly, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. You haven't lost her. She's just lost right now. She'll find her way back to you. You'll see. Simultaneously, Mom's condition improved slightly over the years. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep, I felt a mixture of grief and, shamefully, relief. Suddenly, I found myself alone in this big, empty house. The silence was deafening. No more beeping medical equipment. No more rigid schedules of medications and therapy sessions. Just me, rattling around in rooms full of memories, the ghosts of laughter and tears echoing in the emptiness. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice I knew anywhere, even after all these years. Mom, it's Sarah. A jolt of hope surged through me, a fragile bud pushing through the frozen ground. I was hoping we could meet to talk, she said, her voice hesitant. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown, a neutral ground where we could hopefully bridge the chasm that had grown between us. As I waited, my hand shaking around my coffee cup, I spotted a young woman entering the cafe. It took me a moment to realize it was Sarah, a beautiful young woman, radiating a confidence I'd never seen in her before. Hi, Mom, she said, sliding into the seat across from me, a strange smile on her face. We made awkward small talk at first, a carefully choreographed dance of pleasantries designed to avoid the painful truths that lay simmering beneath the surface. She filled me in on her life, her job, her friends, painting a picture of a happy, successful young woman. Then, she dropped a bombshell. I'm getting married, she said, her voice a little too casual. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Here's our invitation. My heart swelled with a confusing mix of joy and sadness, a bittersweet ache for the little girl who was now a grown woman, a bride ready to start her own life. Oh, Sarah, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you. Listen, she said, cutting me off abruptly, her tone suddenly businesslike. Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I wanted to meet. I was hoping to talk about Grandma's inheritance. The house, her savings. She paused, taking a deep breath. I want them. I felt like I had been slapped. The sudden sting of her words stealing the air from my lungs. Excuse me, I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. Mom, she said, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with a calculating light. That house is in a great area. It's worth a fortune. After the wedding, Jake and I want to live there. Start our family there. Sarah, you haven't set foot in that house in over a decade. The words burst from me, fueled by a simmering rage. I was a kid then, she said dismissively. I've grown up. Times have changed. And let's face it, I'm Grandma's only grandchild. She would have wanted me to have it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The sheer audacity of her entitlement. Wanted you to have it. Sarah, you didn't even come to her funeral You didn't call, didn't write for years. The point is, that house should be mine, she insisted, her voice rising. I deserve a comfortable life. Deserve. I was practically shaking with rage now, my voice trembling with the force of my emotions. You didn't lift a finger to help when grandma was sick. I gave up my life to care for her. And now you think you deserve a house? Sarah's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. If that's how you want to play it. She stood up abruptly, snatching the wedding invitation from the table. You know what? Forget it. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't need your negativity there. And I don't need your permission to take what's mine. Sarah stormed out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, stunned and heartbroken, watching a daughter I loved morph into a stranger, cold and greedy, driven by an insatiable hunger for what she believed she was owed. I alternated between rage, grief, and a numbing emptiness, a swirling vortex of emotions that threatened to consume me. But as the dust settled, I realized something surprising. I felt relieved. The crushing weight of hoping for reconciliation, of clinging to the fantasy of a loving mother-daughter relationship, had finally lifted. In its place was a strange sort of peace, a quiet acceptance of the painful reality. I didn't attend Sarah's wedding. I didn't send a gift or a card. Curiosity got the better of me a few days later, and I found myself scrolling through Sarah's social media, a dangerous indulgence that I knew would only bring me pain. There she was, radiant in white, posing for pictures with her new husband surrounded by friends and family. I read the captions, the carefully crafted narratives of a perfect life, a fairy tale wedding, a blissful future. My blood ran cold when I saw a post about her amazing and supportive mother who had always been there for her. I read it twice, marveling at the sheer audacity of her lies, the blatant disregard for the truth. Part of me wanted to comment, to expose her deception, to set the record straight. But what would be the point? Who would believe me? And more importantly, what would it accomplish other than to further damage a relationship that was already beyond repair? As for everyone else, well, their opinions of me, based on a stranger's social media post, were hardly my concern. A week later, my cousin Jeannie called, her voice tight with anger and concern. Kelly, I thought you should know Sarah's been talking about suing you for your mom's estate. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Let her try. Apparently, her lawyer told her she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Your mom left everything to you. Of course, Mom had taken care of that. She'd always been the practical one, the one who planned for the future, even when the future looked bleak. Thanks for letting me know, Jeannie, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. But honestly, I don't care what Sarah does anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a moment of shared understanding and quiet support. Then, I'm proud of you, Kelly. After everything you've been through, you deserve some peace. As I hung up the phone, I looked around the house, Mom's house, now my house. Every corner held memories, both good and bad, a tapestry woven with the threads of love, loss, and resilience. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe here, like I could finally let go of the past and embrace the future, whatever it may hold. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Mom had loved so much. It had gotten a bit overgrown in recent years, a reflection of my own neglect. Maybe it was time to bring some life back to it, to nurture something beautiful and new in the space where so much pain had taken root. As I stood there, planning my next trip to the garden center, I realized something profound. My story wasn't over. I still had a life to live, a future to build, a garden to cultivate. And while Sarah might not be a part of that future, that didn't mean my life was any less meaningful or fulfilling. The garden was in full bloom when the call came. I'd spent the past few months throwing myself into its restoration, finding solace in the simple act of nurturing life, of coaxing beauty on the earth. The roses Mom had loved so much were just starting to open, their delicate petals unfurling in the warm sunshine. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a jarring interruption to the tranquility of the moment. A known number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button, a nagging sense of foreboding that I couldn't ignore. Hello, I said, my voice hesitant. Mom, Sarah's voice, choked with sobs. Sarah, what's wrong? My heart lurched with a mixture of fear and a reluctant, protective instinct. I'm pregnant, she cried, her voice cracking with desperation. And we're struggling. Mom, I need money. You have to help me. You can't leave your grandchild without anything. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing my breath and leaving me reeling. You abandoned me, Mom, she continued, her voice rising in hysteria. You never tried to contact me. You never fought for me. And now you're going to abandon your grandchild, too. Something inside me snapped, not with anger, not with rage, but with a quiet, steely resolve. Sarah, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. That's enough. She fell silent, probably shocked that I'd interrupted her tirade, that I'd dared to challenge her narrative of victimhood. I never abandoned you, I continued, my voice firm and unwavering. I sent child support every month, without fail. I called, I emailed, I texted. You blocked my number. You chose your father and stepmother. You made your decisions, and I respected them, even when they broke my heart. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength. No, Sarah, it's time you took responsibility for your choices and your life. I'm not your bank, I said, my voice unwavering. I'm not your safety net, and I'm not going to be manipulated by lies and guilt trips. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line, the rugged, desperate sound. If you need help, I said, my voice softening slightly, go to your father and stepmother. They're your real family. Remember, the ones you chose. I've made my peace with that. Now, you need to make peace with the consequences of your choices. I'm your daughter, she wailed, her voice cracking with desperation. Yes, I said softly, and I'll always love the little girl you were. But I don't know the woman you've become, and I don't think I want to. I took another deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do. Goodbye, Sarah. I wish you and your child well, but please don't call me again. I ended the call before she could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I lowered the phone. Then, slowly, I felt the weight lift. The last vestige of hope and expectation finally laid to rest. I looked around at the garden, at the house beyond, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. This was my life now, a life I had built for myself, a life filled with beauty, peace, and a quiet sense of purpose. I picked up my pruning shears and turned back to the roses, ready to prune away the dead and dying branches, to nurture the blooms that were just beginning to unfold. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly, completely free. Now, based on everything you've read, do you think I handled the situation with Sarah correctly? Was I too harsh? Should I have tried to help her, despite everything? I'm torn, and honestly, I'm desperate for some outside perspective. I'm open to hearing all your opinions, whether you think I was right or wrong. So please share your thoughts freely and honestly.